In a bustling hospital corridor filled with the sounds of beeping machines and hurried footsteps, an alarming scene unfolded one afternoon. A veteran, known for his resilient spirit and service to the country, suddenly collapsed while waiting for his appointment. The atmosphere shifted instantly, whispers of distress filled the air as people realized that urgent medical assistance was needed. In the midst of this chaos, a Filipina nurse named Maria sprang into action. Maria was no stranger to emergencies. Her years of experience had equipped her with both the skills and the confidence required in high-pressure situations. When she saw the veteran fall to the ground, her instincts kicked in. Without a moment's hesitation, she rushed to his side. Her heart raced as she assessed the situation, quickly recognizing that he was unresponsive and not breathing. Time was of the essence. As she knelt beside him, Maria began administering CPR, her hands moving with precision and urgency. With each compression, she willed herself to remain calm, focusing solely on the task at hand. The knowledge she had gained through rigorous training and countless hours on the job flooded back to her as she counted out loud, maintaining the rhythm necessary for effective chest compressions. With each pump, she could feel the weight of responsibility resting on her shoulders, not just for the veteran's life but also for those gathered around them, watching with a mix of hope and fear. As seconds stretched into what felt like an eternity, bystanders began to gather. Some held their breath, while others reached for their phones to call for help. Maria knew that every second mattered, but she refused to give in to panic. She believed in her training and in the importance of staying focused. She alternated between compressions and rescue breaths, her determination unwavering. Finally, after what seemed like an endless struggle against time and fate, medical personnel arrived on the scene. They took over from Maria, who stepped back but remained closely involved in the unfolding events. The team quickly assessed the veteran's condition and continued advanced life support measures. As they worked swiftly to stabilize him, Maria felt a mix of relief and anxiety wash over her, a hope that her efforts had made a difference. However, as soon as the immediate crisis was averted and the veteran was transported to a treatment area, the mood in the hospital shifted dramatically. Within moments, Maria found herself facing hospital administrators who were less concerned about her swift actions in saving a life than about adherence to protocols. Before long, she was informed of her suspension pending an investigation into her actions that day. The news hit Maria like a thunderbolt. She had acted out of instinct and compassion, a natural response for someone dedicated to caring for others. Confusion and disbelief coursed through her veins as she grappled with the reality of being suspended for doing what any healthcare worker would have done in her position. Her mind raced with thoughts about what it meant for her career and future in nursing. As reports circulated within the hospital community about Maria's suspension following her heroic attempt to save a life, conversations began to arise among colleagues and patients alike. Questions about hospital policies and ethical responsibilities surfaced amidst expressions of support for Maria's actions. This incident catalyzed discussions on whether protocols should adapt to better reflect real-life emergencies where human instinct can mean the difference between life and death. The arrival of the hospital director 45 minutes later marked another pivotal moment in this unfolding narrative. With many eyes upon him, he carried the weight of expectations from both staff and patients who sought clarity in this perplexing situation. The stage was set for deeper conversations about compassion in healthcare roles and how institutions can better support their frontline workers during critical moments. Maria's instincts kicked in the moment she witnessed the veteran collapse. Years spent honing her skills in nursing had prepared her for emergencies just like this, but nothing could truly replicate the intensity of being on the front lines when life hung in the balance. As she sprinted across the corridor, her mind was clear despite the chaos surrounding her, a testament to both her expertise and unwavering dedication to patient care. Refusing to let fear take hold, she immediately assessed the situation when she reached him. The veteran lay motionless on the floor, his face pale and devoid of color. Panic began to ripple through the gathered crowd as they realized what was happening, but Maria's years of training allowed her to stay focused. She quickly knelt beside him, her heart racing not out of fear but out of a fierce determination to save a life. Without wasting a moment, Maria began performing chest compressions. Each compression was deliberate and forceful, an execution of years of practice during simulations and alongside emergency response teams. She counted loudly, 1 and 2 and 3, rhythmically pushing down on his chest as she instinctively recalled what she had been taught. Compressions must be at least 2 inches deep and delivered at a rate of 100 to 120 per minute. With each pump, she fully committed herself to the task. There was no room for doubts or distractions. The cacophony of gasps from onlookers dimmed into background noise as Maria focused exclusively on the veteran before her. Her hands moved with precision, guided by the muscle memory ingrained from countless hours of practice and repetition. Despite the mounting pressure around her, an audience collectively holding its breath, she found solace in knowing that she was doing everything within her power to help him. In between cycles of compressions, Maria took a quick breath and leaned down to deliver rescue breaths. She pinched his nose closed while sealing her lips around his mouth, exhaling gently into his lungs. Her technique was steady and assured. This wasn't merely training at work, it was a manifestation of compassion fused with skill that had been cultivated throughout her career. As she switched back to compressions, she glanced up briefly, assessing the crowd's reaction. Some were recording with their phones while others appeared helplessly anxious. Back and forth, compressions followed breaths in a rhythmic labor that felt both eternal and fleeting. Time seemed suspended, each second stretched beyond its natural bounds as uncertainty loomed over them all. But Maria was resolute, she refused to succumb to despair. Rather than buckle under pressure, every heartbeat and breath felt like another chance for intervention, another opportunity to spark hope. Finally, after what felt like an eternity subjective to both her and those watching, sirens echoed down the hallway. The arrival of emergency medical personnel brought a wave of relief among bystanders who had gathered nearby. They rushed in with tools and experience designed precisely for moments such as this one. As they began their assessment of the veteran's condition, Maria stepped back but remained visibly engaged in the effort. Exhaling deeply after rendering assistance felt almost surreal. Relief mixed with anxiety washed over her as she reflected on what had just transpired. Had she done enough? Would he be okay? Despite feeling overwhelmed by these emotions, Maria also knew that regardless of how the situation unfolded next, she acted as any trained nurse would have done in that pivotal moment. However, little did she know that while saving a life would often be hailed as heroic work in healthcare settings, it could also draw scrutiny from administrators bound by protocols designed for safety, but sometimes detached from real-life consequences experienced by frontline workers like herself. Moments after this crisis settled began an unforeseen turmoil that would cast shadows over Maria's future in nursing and challenge broader conversations concerning emergency protocols within healthcare institutions. As the emergency medical personnel rushed into the corridor, the atmosphere shifted from one of uncertainty to focused urgency. Maria stepped aside, allowing the trained paramedics to take over while her heart raced with a mix of relief and anxiety. She had poured every ounce of her training and instinct into those moments with the veteran, but now it was out of her hands. The paramedics quickly assessed the situation, evaluating the veteran's condition and taking measurements that would guide their immediate actions. Maria stood close by, listening intently as they spoke in professional tones. Keywords like pulse, breathing, and stabilizing punctuated their conversation. It was a relief to hear that they managed to find a faint pulse and detect shallow breaths emerging from his lips. The veteran had not slipped away completely. Maria's efforts had made a tangible difference. With deftness born of experience, the paramedics began additional interventions. They set up an oxygen mask, carefully placing it over the veteran's mouth and nose to ensure he received adequate air supply. One of the team members initiated an 4-line, administering fluids that would help stabilize his cardiovascular function. Within moments, they hooked him up to monitors that displayed vital signs, checking his heart rate and oxygen saturation levels. Maria watched with bated breath as the medical professionals worked seamlessly together. They communicated efficiently, each member knowing exactly what needed to be done. She felt a swell of pride for having contributed to this moment. Her emergency response had bridged a critical gap until advanced medical care could arrive. As she observed them work, Maria couldn't help but reflect on her actions just moments before. Every chest compression she delivered had been deliberate, every breath she provided had been filled with intention. It was clear now that those efforts were not in vain. The veteran's color began to improve slightly, there was some life returning to his cheeks as he received proper care. However, amidst this wave of hope came another realization: emotions rapidly fluctuated between reassurance and concern. While the veteran appeared stable for the moment, there remained uncertainty about what lay ahead. Would he regain full consciousness? Were there underlying conditions that had led to this crisis? These questions played on repeat in Maria's mind, leaving her both anxious and hopeful. Once stabilized, the paramedics prepared to transport him out of the hospital corridor and into an ambulance waiting just outside. As they wheeled him away on a stretcher, Maria caught a glimpse of his face, a sight that would stick with her long after this day was over. The veteran's eyes fluttered open briefly before succumbing again to unconsciousness. There was an acknowledgement within those fleeting moments that communicated both gratitude and vulnerability. After watching him leave her sight, an overwhelming reality set in. She had acted heroically and selflessly in an attempt to save a life during those harrowing minutes. Yet now she faced potential repercussions for stepping beyond what hospital policies deemed acceptable practice under pressure. As whispers started circulating among staff about her imminent suspension following such a critical incident, Maria felt frustration boiling beneath her surface. Could saving a life truly warrant punishment? Those who witnessed her actions, the onlookers who recorded videos or offered support, stood firmly behind her in silent agreement that instincts shouldn't come at such a high cost. Yet unknown complications lingered beyond this immediate outcome. Discussions regarding emergency protocols versus real-life situations were only beginning as medical professionals reflected on their roles within healthcare systems that sometimes prioritized rules over compassion-driven responses. The moment the veteran was wheeled away into the ambulance, the atmosphere in the hospital began to shift. The adrenaline that had surged through Maria's veins during the emergency started to wear off, leaving space for an unsettling tension to creep in. Just minutes after her life-saving efforts, she was approached by a stern-looking hospital administrator who asked her to follow him to the office for a discussion. As they walked, Maria's mind raced with questions. She had acted out of instinct and compassion, motivated solely by the urgency of the situation. But she knew that hospitals operated under strict protocols designed to minimize risk and ensure patient safety. While Maria understood the importance of these policies, she couldn't shake the feeling that her spontaneous decision to intervene might cost her dearly. Upon entering the administrator's office, Maria was met by a panel that included a couple of senior nursing staff members and the hospital's compliance officer. They wasted no time launching into a discussion about her actions. The room felt suffocating, and Maria could feel her anxiety mounting as they referenced policies surrounding emergency interventions by nursing staff. One administrator cited the hospital's protocol that required all medical emergencies to be managed by designated emergency response teams unless otherwise directed. Though well-intentioned, this policy left little room for flexibility in situations where immediate action could save lives. The stark reality that Maria had acted independently, without following established procedures, hung heavily in the air. Maria listened intently as they pointed out that she had not alerted the emergency team before taking action. They argued that this lapse could have led to complications not only for the patient but also for herself and the hospital. Each word felt like a weight added to her shoulders, and she struggled to maintain her composure as she defended her reasoning. "I saw he was in trouble, I couldn't just stand by," Maria replied, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I did what I was trained to do." She recounted how she had relied on her experience and training in those critical moments, trying to convey that her choice had stemmed from a deep-rooted commitment to patient care. However, the panel remained unmoved. They emphasized that while her actions may have been heroic, they were also against hospital policy, which existed to protect both patients and staff from potential liability. A suspension was deemed necessary as a precautionary measure while they conducted a thorough investigation into the incident. As Maria left the office, her heart sank. She felt bewildered by how quickly things had escalated from saving a life to standing on the precipice of losing her job. The weight of their decision began to settle in. She would be suspended pending review, effectively sidelined at a time when she felt most capable and driven. In the days that followed, news of her suspension rippled through the hospital community like wildfire. Staff members were divided. Some expressed their support for Maria's actions, citing her selflessness and quick response in a crisis, while others worried about the implications of breaking protocol. Conversations erupted in break rooms and hallways about balancing emergency care with institutional rules. Outside of work, Maria faced an emotional struggle as she reflected on what had transpired. She had acted instinctively, motivated by compassion rather than adherence to protocol, yet now found herself at odds with the very system designed to support caregivers like herself. The looming question of whether she would be reinstated weighed heavily on her mind, fueling a growing movement among colleagues advocating for reflection on hospital policies regarding emergency responses. As discussions intensified among healthcare professionals regarding how protocols could sometimes hinder timely and compassionate care, it became evident that this incident would not only impact Maria's career but also spark broader conversations about how institutions can better empower nurses and medical staff to act in urgent situations without fear of repercussions. In the days following Maria's suspension, the atmosphere within the hospital was charged with a mix of tension and solidarity. Rumors spread quickly, and whispers about her actions echoed through the break rooms and hallways. While some staff members were concerned about the implications of her decision to intervene, many others rallied in support of Maria, recognizing her courage and quick thinking during a life-or-death situation. Among her fellow nurses, there was an outpouring of support for Maria's actions. Many had experienced similar moments when instinct took precedence over protocol, and they understood that in emergencies, every second counted. During their shifts, they began to openly discuss the incident, sharing stories of times they had acted on their training without waiting for explicit permission. The conversations grew passionate as they debated how hospital policies sometimes seemed disconnected from the realities faced by frontline healthcare workers. Several nurses organized a meeting to address their concerns directly with administration. They wanted to advocate for a review of emergency protocols that could better accommodate the instinctive responses required in critical situations. "This isn't just about Maria, it's about all of us," one nurse passionately stated during the meeting. "We need to know we can act without fear of retribution when lives are at stake." Patients also chimed in, expressing their disbelief over Maria's suspension. Those who had been treated by her recognized her dedication and compassion firsthand. Many shared heartfelt testimonials about how she had made a difference in their care. Some patients felt compelled to write letters to the hospital administration, urging them to reconsider the decision and recognize Maria's actions as heroic rather than reckless. Social media became another platform for expressing support. Hashtags like #StandWithMaria began trending locally as community members voiced their opinions about the incident. Posts flooded in praising Maria for embodying what it means to be a caring nurse, someone who prioritizes patient welfare above all else. Local news outlets picked up on the story, amplifying calls for policy reform while simultaneously highlighting Maria's commitment to saving lives. The broader community also reacted with solidarity. As word spread, local organizations focused on healthcare advocacy reached out to Maria's family and friends to offer support. They emphasized that discussions around policy reform were vital not just for Maria but for nurses everywhere who might find themselves in similar circumstances. In response to the growing tide of support, hospital administrators scheduled an open forum where staff could voice their concerns directly. This became a critical moment for many employees who felt unheard or undervalued under existing policies. The forum drew an unexpectedly large crowd, nurses from various departments came together not only for Maria but also to advocate for broader changes that would empower healthcare workers during emergencies. During this gathering, several colleagues spoke eloquently about their shared experiences and emphasized how rigid policies could sometimes hinder effective care delivery. They expressed hope that Maria's situation would serve as a catalyst for change within the institution, a chance to re-evaluate protocols surrounding emergency interventions rather than punish those who acted on their instincts. As discussions continued into days and weeks, it became evident that this incident was more than just an isolated event. It fostered dialogue around compassion and flexibility in healthcare settings. The community's reaction underscored a vital truth: while protocols exist for good reason, there must always be space for human instinct and empathy in medicine, qualities embodied by nurses like Maria who choose to act decisively when lives are at stake. Through it all, Maria remained at the heart of these discussions, a symbol of bravery amidst bureaucratic challenges, and she was buoyed by knowing that so many stood firmly behind her as she navigated this difficult chapter in her career. The collective voice advocating for change grew louder each day, igniting hope that perhaps real progress could emerge from this turmoil within the hospital walls. 45 minutes after the dramatic incident, the atmosphere in the hospital was thick with tension and anticipation. Staff members were still abuzz with discussions about Maria's actions and the implications of her suspension when the hospital director, Mr. Thompson, arrived on the scene. Known for his calm demeanor and decisive leadership, he carried an air of authority as he stepped into the busy corridor, immediately drawing the attention of both nurses and administrators gathered in clusters. With a stern yet empathetic expression, Mr. Thompson began addressing the crowd. "I understand there has been a serious incident today and that emotions are running high. I want to assure you that we will address this matter thoroughly and fairly." His voice resonated through the corridor as he acknowledged the gravity of the situation surrounding Maria's decision to intervene. First, he convened a small meeting with senior staff members, including those who had initiated the inquiry into Maria's actions. They gathered in a conference room just off the main corridor, where walls adorned with hospital accolades provided an ironic backdrop for the serious conversation taking place. Mr. Thompson wanted to ensure that all perspectives were considered before any conclusions were drawn. He encouraged his team to reflect on not only the protocols but also the extraordinary circumstances faced by frontline workers. "Let's remember why we're here," he said, leaning forward in his chair to emphasize his point. "Our primary role is to care for our patients. We need to ensure our policies facilitate that, especially in emergency situations." There was a palpable tension in the room as he laid out his expectations, an immediate review of emergency protocols and a commitment to understanding the context behind Maria's actions. As discussions progressed within the meeting, it became clear that Mr. Thompson was taking the matter seriously. He invited input from everyone present and urged them to share their concerns about strict adherence to policies during emergencies. A few nurses spoke up, recounting moments when they had acted on instinct in critical situations without clear directives, echoing sentiments voiced by their peers in the days following Maria's suspension. Meanwhile, news of Mr. Thompson's arrival reached Maria through whispers among her colleagues, who felt reassured knowing he was taking an active role in addressing the situation. The sentiment around the hospital was shifting. With each passing minute, support for Maria grew stronger, powered by hope that Mr. Thompson could facilitate a fair evaluation of her actions. After concluding his initial meeting with administrators, Mr. Thompson took time to address the staff gathered in the hallways. He stepped onto a small platform where nurses had begun to assemble, eyes glued on him with anticipation. "I want to thank all of you for your dedication and service," he began. "The decisions you make in high-pressure situations are commendable, and it's important we find ways to support those instincts while maintaining patient safety." His comments resonated deeply with many present. Maria's peers nodded in agreement, encouraged by their leaders' understanding of their challenges in balancing compassionate care with compliance to policy. Mr. Thompson announced plans for a series of workshops designed to reevaluate existing emergency protocols, inviting feedback from frontline staff on how to refine guidelines without stifling their ability to act swiftly. As he concluded his remarks, applause erupted spontaneously from the crowd, reinforcing a collective sense of solidarity that had been brewing since Maria's situation first came to light. Many saw Mr. Thompson's engagement as a turning point, a potential pivot towards more supportive policies that empower rather than restrict healthcare workers. Maria watched from afar, her heart swelling with gratitude as she realized that her colleagues' advocacy was taking shape into something tangible, change driven by compassion and mutual respect within their profession. With renewed hope, she leaned into the possibility that this moment might be more than just about her. It could signify a larger shift toward fostering an environment where medical professionals felt empowered to act decisively and compassionately when it mattered most. As discussions continued throughout the day, one thing became clear: Mr. Thompson's presence had ignited a commitment to redefining care standards together, a path toward healing not just for patients but also for those dedicated to serving them. In the days following Maria's suspension, the hospital administration initiated a structured investigation to thoroughly evaluate the incident and its implications. Understanding the gravity of the situation, Mr. Thompson emphasized the importance of gathering all relevant facts before making any final decisions regarding Maria's future. The process began with assembling a dedicated investigation team composed of senior nursing staff, compliance officers, and representatives from human resources. The first step in their approach was to gather testimonies from witnesses who had been present during the incident. They reached out to fellow nurses, patients in the vicinity, and even members of the emergency medical team who arrived shortly after Maria's intervention. Each witness was invited to provide a detailed account of what they observed, allowing for a comprehensive understanding of the timeline and context surrounding the emergency response. Witness interviews took place in a series of confidential sessions conducted in a private conference room. Each participant was encouraged to share their perspective without fear of repercussions. This environment fostered open dialogue. Many expressed admiration for Maria's quick thinking and highlighted how her actions had likely contributed to saving the veteran's life. Nurses recounted their own experiences with critical emergencies, further emphasizing the need for instinctive responses when time is of the essence. Simultaneously, the investigation team began reviewing hospital protocols related to emergency interventions and CPR procedures. They scrutinized existing guidelines that dictated how staff should respond in crises, paying special attention to sections concerning who is authorized to take charge during medical emergencies. The goal was to identify any discrepancies between policy and practice that might have influenced Maria's decision-making process in that critical moment. As part of this review, administrative staff examined documentation from past incidents involving emergency responses within the hospital. This included reports on how various cases were handled by nurses and whether any previous actions taken by staff had led to similar scrutiny. By analyzing these documents, they aimed to uncover patterns that could inform potential revisions to current policies. In addition to internal reviews, Mr. Thompson decided it was crucial to engage with external experts in emergency medicine and nursing ethics. He reached out to consultants who specialized in healthcare policies and training programs, asking for their insights on best practices when it comes to empowering healthcare workers in urgent situations. Their expertise would help shape recommendations that not only addressed Maria's case but also improved overall response strategies across the hospital. Throughout this period, Mr. Thompson remained transparent about the investigation process with both staff and Maria's supporters. He held regular briefings with hospital personnel, reassuring them that their voices would be heard as part of this inquiry. The atmosphere began to shift as employees felt more involved. Many anticipated positive changes might emerge from this troubling situation. Maria herself was kept informed about developments related to her case through periodic updates from her union representative. Though she faced uncertainty about her career, she found solace in knowing that numerous colleagues were advocating for her cause and pushing for changes within hospital protocols that could benefit all nurses. As the investigation progressed over several days, tension lingered among staff as they awaited conclusions from the inquiry team. Discussions about Maria's actions continued both formally and informally. Many staff members expressed hope that this situation would lead to broader conversations regarding how healthcare institutions can support their workers during emergencies without imposing punitive measures. Finally, just as support for Maria peaked within the community, Mr. Thompson announced a town hall meeting where he would present findings from the investigation and share proposed changes to hospital policies. This meeting promised a pivotal moment, one where collective voices could converge toward solutions aimed at fostering an environment where compassion-driven actions were recognized as vital components of quality patient care rather than violations of protocol. As anticipation built around this upcoming discussion, hope swelled among staff and community members alike. They believed real change could emerge from adversity, a chance not only for justice for Maria but also for a systemic transformation within their healthcare institution that valued both patient safety and responsive care practices equally. The ethical implications of suspending Maria for her actions during the emergency extended far beyond the walls of the hospital. They resonated deeply within the broader healthcare community and raised challenging questions about the intersection of patient care and institutional guidelines. When a healthcare worker takes decisive action in a life-threatening situation, it highlights the fundamental ethical principle of beneficence, the obligation to act in the best interest of the patient. In Maria's case, her quick response to administer CPR undoubtedly contributed to stabilizing the veteran, demonstrating her commitment to patient welfare. However, the suspension also shone a spotlight on the necessity of adhering to established protocols designed to ensure safety and accountability within healthcare settings. These guidelines exist not only to protect patients but also to safeguard healthcare professionals from potential legal repercussions when things go wrong. From this perspective, the hospital's decision to suspend Maria was rooted in an attempt to maintain order and uphold standards that govern medical practice. Yet the ethical dilemma arises when weighing these institutional policies against the instinctive nature of emergency responses. In moments where every second counts, strict adherence to procedure can hinder timely intervention. Critics of Maria's suspension argued that punishing a nurse for acting in accordance with her training and compassion could discourage other healthcare workers from taking necessary action in future emergencies. The chilling effect of such a suspension risks creating an environment where fear overrides professional judgment, leading to potentially tragic outcomes. Moreover, the situation begs the question of how healthcare institutions can balance accountability with compassion. While protocols are essential for ensuring quality care, they should not become barriers that prevent nurses and doctors from acting decisively when lives are at stake. This incident catalyzed discussions about whether existing policies adequately reflect the realities faced by frontline workers who must navigate complex ethical landscapes amidst chaos. As the investigation unfolded, many staff voiced their concerns about the inadequacies of current emergency guidelines, arguing for a reassessment that would empower nurses like Maria to utilize their training without fear of retribution. They emphasized that ethical care involves not only adhering to protocols but also recognizing the human element in medicine, an element that calls for flexibility and understanding, especially in crisis situations. Furthermore, the conversations surrounding Maria's suspension highlighted the importance of fostering a culture of open communication within healthcare institutions. It became clear that staff members needed assurance that their instincts would be supported rather than penalized. Training programs focused on emergency response could incorporate lessons on navigating ethical dilemmas, empowering nurses to feel confident in their decision-making processes while also understanding institutional expectations. The community's response, both within the hospital and beyond, reflects a collective yearning for change. Nurses, patients, and advocates began calling for revisions to existing policies, urging leaders to consider frameworks that prioritize patient care while granting healthcare professionals the autonomy necessary to act swiftly in emergencies. As discussions progressed toward Mr. Thompson's town hall meeting, there was an increasing sense of optimism among staff members and supporters alike. Many believe this moment could serve as a turning point for healthcare practices that have often been rigidly defined by protocol alone. The hope was that this situation would lead to systemic changes that recognized both patient welfare and professional integrity as paramount. In grappling with these ethical considerations, Maria's case became emblematic of a broader movement advocating for compassionate care practices within healthcare systems. Ultimately, it underscored the need for ongoing dialogue about how best to support those who dedicate their lives to healing others while ensuring that institutional frameworks evolve alongside these vital practices. As stakeholders prepared for further discussions, many felt empowered by the possibility that positive change could emerge from such a challenging experience for Maria and others like her navigating similar dilemmas in emergency care. As the investigation into Maria's actions concluded, the atmosphere in the hospital was charged with anticipation. Colleagues and supporters alike anxiously awaited the outcome of a case that had sparked intense discussions about emergency protocols, ethics, and patient care. Mr. Thompson, the hospital director, had promised to provide clarity, and now it was time for him to deliver his findings. In a packed auditorium filled with staff members from various departments, Mr. Thompson took to the stage. He began by acknowledging the emotional toll the incident had taken on everyone involved, particularly Maria, who had acted courageously during a moment of crisis. The room fell silent as he detailed the investigation's findings. Witness testimonies overwhelmingly supported Maria's decision to administer CPR, praising her quick thinking in what could have been a fatal situation for the veteran. Mr. Thompson emphasized that while protocols are essential for patient safety and institutional accountability, they should not undermine the instinctive nature that healthcare workers rely on during emergencies. He recognized that Maria's actions were guided by her training and a sincere commitment to patient care. This acknowledgement resonated deeply within the audience. Many felt a collective relief that their advocacy had not gone unheard. After summarizing the investigation results, Mr. Thompson announced that Maria would be reinstated as a nurse at the hospital effective immediately. He explained that her suspension was deemed unnecessary given the circumstances surrounding her actions, highlighting that she had acted within the ethical framework of beneficence, doing what was best for her patient in a life-or-death situation. However, reinstatement came with an important caveat: the administration would work alongside Maria to enhance training programs focused on emergency response protocols. This would ensure all staff members felt empowered to act decisively without fear of punishment when facing critical situations in the future. The aim was not only to support nurses like Maria but also to foster an environment where patient welfare is prioritized above rigid adherence to protocol. The room erupted into applause as colleagues expressed their approval of this decision. Many were visibly moved. For them, this outcome signified a significant shift towards recognizing compassion as an integral aspect of healthcare practice. It also instilled hope that institutional guidelines might evolve to better support those on the front lines of care. In addition to her reinstatement, Mr. Thompson announced plans for a new task force dedicated to reviewing emergency policies within the hospital. This task force would consist of nurses, doctors, compliance officers, and even patients who could provide insights into how protocols could be refined to prioritize both safety and compassionate care practices. The intention was clear: create a culture of collaboration where frontline workers could communicate openly about challenges without fearing repercussions. As Maria stepped off the stage following Mr. Thompson's announcement, she felt a wave of emotions wash over her, relief mixed with gratitude for her colleagues' unwavering support during such trying times. She knew that while her return to work marked a personal victory, it also represented a larger movement within healthcare toward empowering caregivers in urgent situations. In subsequent weeks, conversations around emergency protocols shifted from criticism to constructive dialogue among staff members. Nurses began sharing their own experiences more openly in meetings and training sessions. There was now a palpable sense of camaraderie as they collectively advocated for changes that reflected their reality in high-pressure scenarios. Maria's case became emblematic of this newfound determination, a reminder that medical professionals must balance adherence to guidelines with compassion-driven responses when lives hang in the balance. As discussions continued regarding how best to implement these changes across departments, there remained an underlying sense of optimism throughout the hospital community about what future practices might look like. Ultimately, this episode served not only as a turning point for Maria but also as an opportunity for systemic change in an institution committed to fostering both safety and empathy in patient care, a goal many believed was worth striving for together. The incident involving Maria and her suspension for administering CPR has reverberated throughout the healthcare community, leading to a profound reevaluation of policies surrounding emergency responses and the support systems in place for healthcare workers. As discussions fueled by her case continued, it became clear that this situation was emblematic of broader challenges faced by nurses and other medical personnel across various institutions. One of the most significant implications of Maria's case is the urgent need to redefine emergency response protocols. Traditionally, many hospitals have operated under rigid guidelines that prioritize protocol adherence above all else. However, the outpouring of support for Maria highlighted an essential truth: in emergencies where time is critical, instinct and quick decision-making can be more valuable than strict compliance with established procedures. The consensus among colleagues and advocates was that flexibility should be integrated into emergency protocols to allow healthcare workers to act swiftly when faced with life-threatening situations. Moreover, the case underscored the necessity for ongoing training that focuses not only on clinical skills but also on emergency ethical decision-making. Many nursing professionals voiced a desire for enhanced training programs that prepare them for the complexities of real-world crises. Such programs could incorporate scenario-based simulations that encourage staff to navigate ethical dilemmas while adhering to patient-centered care principles. By empowering healthcare workers with both knowledge and experience, institutions can cultivate an environment where staff feel confident in their ability to respond appropriately when encounters arise. Another crucial aspect that emerged from the discussions was the importance of fostering a culture of open communication within healthcare settings. The fear of reprimand or suspension often prevents staff from voicing their concerns or sharing their experiences, thus hampering professional development and growth. Many advocates called for mechanisms that allow healthcare workers to report challenges they face in emergencies without fear of retaliation. This would not only improve morale among staff but would also lead to constructive feedback loops that enhance institutional policies. Maria's situation also raised awareness about mental health support for nurses and other healthcare professionals who regularly confront high-stress scenarios. The emotional toll associated with making split-second decisions in life-or-death situations can lead to anxiety and burnout, conditions that are exacerbated when workers feel unsupported by their institutions. Addressing this issue could involve implementing mental health resources such as counseling services or peer support groups specifically designed for those working in high-pressure environments. Providing these resources would demonstrate a commitment not just to patient care but also to the welfare of medical personnel. As conversations evolved toward systemic changes within hospitals, Maria's case became a rallying point for advocacy groups dedicated to improving work conditions for healthcare providers nationwide. These groups began organizing campaigns emphasizing the importance of compassionate care in urgent scenarios, using Maria's story as a powerful example to illustrate the need for reform. Ultimately, the repercussions of this incident prompted a broader dialogue about how best to balance institutional guidelines with the innate human compassion that drives healthcare workers. The push toward reform highlighted a growing acknowledgement within the industry: patient safety must go hand in hand with empowering those on the frontline who provide care. Acknowledging this balance would require leadership willing to challenge outdated norms and embrace change focused on enhancing both patient welfare and caregiver well-being. As hospital administration began drafting revisions to protocols and establishing task forces aimed at reviewing emergency response guidelines, there was a renewed sense of hope circulating through the healthcare community. Maria's experience exemplified how advocacy and solidarity among colleagues can lead not only to personal vindication but also to meaningful systemic change. As discussions progressed, many felt empowered by the possibility that their collective efforts could foster a culture that values both decisive action in emergencies and a compassionate approach to care, an ideal worth striving for together as they moved forward into an uncertain yet promising future. In reflecting on the events surrounding Maria's suspension and the subsequent discussions it sparked, it is clear that the core values of compassion and quick action in nursing must be at the forefront of healthcare practices. Maria's courageous decision to administer CPR in a life-threatening situation exemplifies the kind of instinctive and timely intervention that can save lives. Her actions serve as a reminder of the critical role nurses play in emergencies, where every second counts, and where their training and compassion can lead to miraculous outcomes. However, this incident also sheds light on an essential truth: for healthcare workers to perform at their best, they must operate within a supportive environment that empowers them to make swift decisions without fear of retribution. The scrutiny Maria faced after her intervention raises important questions about how institutional policies can sometimes conflict with the realities of frontline care. When policies prioritize strict adherence over compassionate action, they risk undermining the very essence of patient-centered care. The overwhelming support Maria received from her colleagues and the community highlights a collective desire for change within healthcare institutions. Nurses and medical staff are not just following protocols, they are making split-second decisions that have profound implications on patient outcomes. As such, it is imperative that institutions recognize and celebrate these instincts rather than punish them. The commitment to fostering an environment where compassion is valued alongside compliance could lead to significant improvements in how emergency responses are handled across healthcare settings. Moving forward, creating and implementing training programs that emphasize ethical decision-making in emergencies will be crucial. These programs should not only focus on clinical skills but also prepare healthcare workers to navigate the complex emotional landscape they encounter while caring for patients in distress. Scenario-based training can equip nurses with the tools they need to respond effectively under pressure while reinforcing that their instincts are valid and necessary. Furthermore, fostering open communication channels within hospitals is vital for building a culture of trust and support among staff members. When healthcare workers feel comfortable sharing their experiences and concerns about challenges faced during emergencies, without fear of judgment or discipline, they can contribute valuable insights that drive policy improvements. This feedback loop will not only enhance individual performance but also strengthen overall team dynamics. Additionally, addressing mental health support for nurses is paramount. The stress associated with working in high-pressure environments can lead to burnout, anxiety, and other mental health issues if not properly managed. Providing resources such as counseling services or peer support groups specifically tailored for those facing such challenges will demonstrate a commitment to their well-being. Recognizing that healthcare workers are human beings who need support just like their patients is crucial for fostering resilience in the face of adversity. Ultimately, Maria's experience has become emblematic of a broader movement advocating for systemic reform within healthcare systems, a movement aimed at ensuring both patient safety and caregiver empowerment go hand in hand. The commitment from hospital leadership to review emergency protocols and establish task forces dedicated to these discussions signals hope for meaningful change. As we look ahead, it is vital for healthcare leaders to embrace this opportunity to redefine what it means to provide compassionate care while maintaining high standards of accountability. By prioritizing environments where nurses feel empowered to act decisively during emergencies, we pave the way for a future where instinctual acts of kindness are celebrated as integral parts of medical practice. In conclusion, the journey sparked by Maria's suspension illustrates that compassionate action is not just an ideal but a necessity within nursing practice. By advocating for supportive structures that empower healthcare workers, we ensure that those who dedicate their lives to caring for others can continue making life-saving decisions when it matters most, ultimately transforming healthcare into a system centered around empathy, responsiveness, and excellence in patient care.